Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Conversations. We're excited to have you here for another great, wonderful chat today. Today, we actually have Michael from the Orlando Science Center. I'm going to skip that and let Michael tell us his last name because I didn't ask before how to pronounce it. Who's going to tell us about some community partnership building in the city of Orlando and how they've used universal learning resources to really build up their relationship and present great learning activities for the young people in their community. So Michael, I will pass it along to you to let you
All right.
take the lead.
Thanks, Erica. So I'm Michael Komatovich, or you can say Michael K. I'm lead education specialist at Orlando Science Center. So we have a partnership with a couple sites throughout Orlando, one of which is Grand Avenue Neighborhood Center. And so Universal Learning was actually one of our first touch points we had with the youth at that center to really drive science passion in that neighborhood. It's one of the lowest income zip codes in Orlando. And so when City of Orlando approached us to make this partnership, we, through our Science for All Access initiative, said, let's really build some really strong content for these kids where they can come in and they can learn about science, have some fun along the way. If you don't mind, I'd like to share some slides to show some pictures. So let's share that. You should be able to see my screen now, right? Okay. So this is our classroom at Grand Ave. We renovated it in 2022. It used to be an elementary school, and now it is a neighborhood center for the city where they have all kinds of programming. They have an after-school program for kids. They have camps when school's not in session. They have senior activities. They have all kinds of stuff at this community center. And so there are a lot of access issues in Orlando where it is hard for people to get from certain neighborhoods to the science center just because transportation is a barrier, cost, time, all that. So what we're doing instead is we're going to Grand Ave and we're bringing them science content to the classroom. This is our space we renovated. And so there's some photos of our activities at the center. We have our class we meet with through a different NASA grant, Team 2 SAT, twice a week, doing activities with fourth and fifth graders. So here we're doing stomp rockets and some gardening, and then some of our other kids doing rovers with Lego spike kits. And these are some of the activities we actually piloted during our Astro Olympics session. So as I'm sure you know, because you're with Universal Learning, but for anybody else who's watching who's not familiar, Astro Olympics had a couple stations where youth could engage with some sports activities through Science Lens. It was rolled out during the Olympics seat time, so it kind of was a tie-in between space and sport. So what we did is we used those stations and added some to it, where we made 15 space science stations where the kids work together in groups with station cards to give them some direction on what to do. When our facilitators weren't at the table with them, they were able to do the activities. We had a couple sessions in our classroom. We also had a couple actually happen in the gymnasium. So you'll see that in the pictures coming up. We had a total of 71 kids come across the 4-session series. So that was really exciting. In this picture, we have some of our kids doing Kerbal Space Program. If you're not familiar with that, it is where it's basically like Minecraft, but for rockets. So they get to build rockets and try to fly them to space and launch it. And the kids get really excited when the rocket launches off. We had some other activities brought where they did the gravity well, which is just a big spandex mesh that you put down. And then you have these different spheres on it. And then the larger spheres pulled down the mesh farther. And so it shows gravity in a way that's tangible that is really hard to convey, like just in a regular classroom. So having hands-on is great for that. That was actually also from a NASA resource that was adapted through an ISNet activity. So it's kind of like everything works together synergistically there. And then we had them build some telescopes. And there were activities, like I said, we brought our mobile planetarium to the gymnasium as well. And so they were able to actually go in and look at space in a planetarium, which is great when you're in a rural setting where you can go outside and see the stars at night. But when you're in a city, you have a lot of light pollution. You can't really see stars. So for them, it was maybe the first time they could see how these stars are all laid out. So this, like I said, the Universal Learning grant and the content was our first touch point with neighborhood science at the site in summer, fall 2022. And it gave an entry to these kids for them kind of like a preview of, okay, you're coming to this Universal Learning series. And now when we come back in the spring for other NASA programming, it's kind of that first spark of engagement where they already know they had fun with us, they're looking forward to it, and now they can really dive into what they're really interested in with space. And we really develop those skills further through regular programming. We were also asked some challenges for it. So a one-off session is maybe not as strong to develop sustained interest. That's why we liked that Universal Learning gave us a chance to do 4 sessions because they can come back. Sometimes if you just do a one-off event, if that happens to be the day the kid has a football game, they can't come to it and they're going to go to the football game or their dance recital or whatever the case may be. So we appreciate that it was a 4-session event that even if we didn't get a kid all 4 days, they probably came to at least one of them. So that was great. During after school programming and during even these series of events, that attendance may not be consistent, right? Like there's other camps, they're in chorus, they're in band, they have all these other events happening. So we want to that's a challenge that we're trying to have these repeated things like, can you come to more of them? And we're also trying to increase attendance for larger family events at the neighborhood center. So we're trying to have the opportunity for families to come in, not just our kids we see every week, but also can they bring their parents, their siblings, their grandparents, their friends to larger scale programming. It's been difficult getting attendance to that, getting the word out. We've worked with the site, we've learned a lot from them, and we had much larger attendance at our event last year compared to the one the year before. So we're real excited for that. And that was, are there any questions at this point, I guess, from anyone here about what we did at Grand Nav or about the partnership? I do have the slides for the other stations if anybody's interested in seeing like that level of detail, but I didn't want to put that in the main thing just in case.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. This was great to hear about. I always love hearing about a little more in person how these programs have gone and the impact. And I have lots of questions, but I guess I'll start with one and then make sure I leave room for others to ask. But you talked about how NASA Universe of Learning was an opportunity, kind of your first touch point with this community. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about kind of how that built up and kind of how, just a little bit more about the development of that process.
Sure. So this neighborhood science goes back to our Access for All initiative that came out a few years ago. And so it's through basically trying to drive interest in science in the larger community. We've seen for years the data that shows this certain group of people comes to Science Center a lot. This group doesn't feel like the Science Center is for them and they don't feel like it's relevant. We've tried the cheaper tickets, we've tried the discounted admission, all that. People still can't make it, or they feel like even if they have the free ticket, they can't get there because they don't have a car and public transportation is not really reliable, or the train doesn't run on weekends. So you can only do it during the week, but they're working during the week, so they can't get to the Science Center on the train during the week. So it's a whole like spiral effect, right? So what we did with Neighbors Science is we said, let's go to certain communities in Orlando and do sustained after-school programming for the elementary and middle school students. So that way they have access to the Science Center regularly as part of the regular programming. So we were at Grand Ave, and then there's a couple other centers we're also in. But the goal there is that we're with these kids every week doing this science programming. We have, like I mentioned, a NASA Team 2 SAT grant. We use Universal Learning as that first touch point. We have a couple other funders who have us in there with a lot of different age groups every week. We see kids, basically the K1s come once a week, 2-3s go once a week, and the 4th and 5th graders come twice a week at Grand Ave, and we see those kids all the time. So it really helps make a relationship with the kids. There's some I've known now. This is my 3rd year at Grand Ave, and with the way the grade bands work, like I've known some of his kids now for like 2 years now, and it's really great to see that relationship over time, where they come in at the beginning and they're like, I don't know about science, like science is dumb, it's not for me, science is for those other people. But then they come in, they like making slime, or they like making a telescope, or they like flying the drone, or they like doing the Olympics events. And then, oh, that thing you just said you liked, that's science. And so it's lowering that barrier point so they can get in and they realize, oh, science is for me. I just didn't realize that thing I like doing is called science. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I just am curious. these places that you are, these are facilities that belong to these neighborhood centers. You just
Mhm.
came and kind of took them over. Is that right?
Um, yes and no. So it's a partnership. We have this one is Grand Avenue Neighborhood Center is part of the City of Orlando's Parks and Recs department. So they run an after-school program, and we are one of the vendors who has a presence on the site. There's other groups that do literacy or that do like there's a cooking group that comes in, they have a pottery studio. So we're just one of the vendors comes in and does programming. Instead of them training their staff to lead science STEM activities, they felt it was a better fit for us to come in and lead the STEM activities there. Part of the Team 2 Stat project, which is getting kind of beyond the scope of today, but I can talk your off about it. Part of my role there is actually doing training for the staff of Grand Ave to get them comfortable with STEM as well and getting them to see here's how science can fit in my community and I can actually help facilitate this. They've even some of the stations that I mentioned that we did through Astro Olympics, I adapted into a family event we did last year, but we actually trained the staff on how to lead them and facilitate it. Our other one of our other sites is also City of Orlando partnership, and then the last one is a Boys and Girls Club where we come in and we have a classroom there. So it's not like we didn't take it over, but it's a joint partnership where they've said we have this space, we have these kids, but you Orlando Science Center, you're the expert in how to deliver the STEM content and get the kids engaged in it. So we work with them on that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I love that. And I love that you're now also starting to train the staff members there to build capacity. We
Yes.
all know after school centers, often the educators there maybe don't feel as comfortable with
Mhm.
science, right? Lots of people
Yeah.
say it's not their thing. And until they get into it and we find
Yep.
different avenues to help them find the science that is their science. But many of the after school educators I've worked with have been a little a little hesitant
Mhm.
to dive in. And so great to hear building those relationships also with the educators so they feel more
Yes.
comfortable doing that.
Yes. One thing that we've noticed is whenever we do activities in the classroom, the educators like to work along with the kids. And so for Halloween, we've been asked to table their trunk or treat event they do, which is like a parking lot trick or treating. And I'm training the staff on how to make slime. So we'll do a slime bar with like different spiders and different mix-ins to it. Um, so that way they get excited about the science content because now they're going to learn the chemistry behind slime, not just that we're making slime today. And truth be told, I don't know if they've ever realized that slime is chemistry. So
I feel like that's one of those activities almost everybody's made at some point in their lives and sometimes don't always realize that, right?
mhm.
That this is, real science.
Yep.
That's
That's I have a whole I have the session coming up later this month or in October. So I'm working on that now of how to, show them like, oh, you say you don't like chemistry, but you actually do, and here's the proof.
Mhm. Laura, do you have any questions?
Uh, sure. Yeah. Just thinking about the different groups that you worked with and thinking about the
Mhm,
different challenges that you intentionally designed the programs to overcome.
mhm.
Just curious to hear you say a little bit more about what it means to try to increase access and the different
Sure.
dimensions of access that you were considering.
I think it's a great question. And this is something I don't have a perfect answer to. Like, I wish I had the perfect answer to it because it'd make my life a lot easier. But I think for me, one thing I've learned over the last several years working with these kids in this community is you have to meet people where they're at. Like, I would come in and try to have this high-reaching goal of we're going to do this, this, and this today, but maybe they just want to play with Legos. And like, you know what? If that is what they want to do, and I know that's one luxury of this program is it is a year long I have with the kids. So if my colleague Madison works on this with me and I like if we both realize like they just want to do Legos or slime or something today, we do that now. We infuse a little bit of science into it and then we gradually build it up. I think one hazard or one stumbling block I had a lot earlier in my career is I would try to hit the entire goal immediately. And yes, if I can do that, it's great. But is that what these kids want? Like they're in our school, they just want to come in and have a good time. So part of my job is introducing the science concepts early on, but in a way that it's that low, low stakes, low barrier of entry. we're just going to build some Lego bricks, say, oh, by the way, there's a thing called gravity that's going to keep your tower from falling over or whatever. So you build those things in over time. And I think giving the kids that freedom to build or to do their designs and then introduce the vocabulary after they have discovered it is also beneficial. If I talk about structural integrity, they're going to zone out because, you know, they're 10. But if we build a tower to hold up their astronaut figurine and then it doesn't fall over, now say, oh, your tower had a lot of integrity to it. Now they care about that. It's just kind of like you have to let them play, let them have fun, and then not sneak in the learning, but embed it in a way that it's meaningful for them for where they are.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that answer. And yeah, I don't think there is a perfect answer to that
Yeah.
question. I think it's an ongoing iterative process to think about exactly as you said, how do I meet my target audience or the community that I'm seeking to serve where they're at. I do really appreciate you talking about that playful learning
Yes.
aspect too. I think it's something that in science centers and museums, folks, you know, are aware of and
Yes.
have some familiarity with, but sometimes can get overlooked because play can be learning.
Yes. I'm actually part of Orlando Science Center as part of the Lego Playful Learning Museum Network. And so there's a bunch of us who are going to be at ASTC in a couple of days. Maybe you'll see one of the sessions, but we try to infuse this playful learning in everything we do because it should be playful, it should be joyful, it should be fun. That is how you make people like what they're doing and how they realize like this is something meaningful for me and something I want to do. And it makes it more fun for everybody. Like it's after school, they don't want to be sitting there hearing you lecture at them. They want to be building, they want to be constructing.
Yeah, and I'll point out, like, right, it's free choice learning time, right? Like, it's so important that we make it something they want to choose.
Yes.
Right? This
is if they don't want to be there,
they don't have to
sorry,
be.
Good. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say, like counterpoint to a classroom where, we have things we have to teach them that, they must be learning along that way because we need to make sure students are educated in all these certain things. But there's all this learning time that happens outside of being in the classroom. And it is so important that we showcase what that learning can be and how it can be joyful and fun so that students are choosing it. And then when they go into the classroom, they can be more enthused about those topics that they have to learn about.
Absolutely. I mentioned the tower activity. We did this a couple weeks ago. Are you all familiar with 3 doodlers? It's a pen that you can 3D doodle, like make it, it's like 3D printer pen. So the kids were given toothpicks and 3 doodlers and they had to build a tower to hold up their astronaut figurine. And this boy in 5th grade, I had him last year, he's back again. He was so proud of this tower he made that he just walked up, put it on the windowsill at the end of the day and said, like, can you leave this here? Like, this is not a kid who last year I would have said is going to be like super into science activities. He was so proud of that tower. Like it,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So thinking about NASA's Universal Learning and our goal to kind of help introduce audiences maybe that haven't, you've talked about that aren't as comfortable coming to the museum or maybe aren't as familiar with astrophysics and astronomy content, and maybe it's not in their everyday life, right? What are, you've clearly learned a lot from this particular community. What are some suggestions or things that you would encourage other sites that are thinking about reaching these new types of audiences, and what would your suggestions for them be?
It's a great question too. I would say the first thing is don't discount an idea right off the bat. Even if it sounds silly right away, maybe you'll say something that sounds silly to you, but then somebody else gets an idea from it. Just like there's been times in brainstorming sessions, I will say something like if we're talking about space and the solar system, I'll say like, oh, we could do an art project, and somebody say, oh yeah, we can do like spin art, and they can make something. Or I've seen a thing on NASA's website where they have this 3D constellation where you can make the Big Dipper out of pipe cleaners and gumdrops or whatever. So just no idea is a bad idea when you're brainstorming. Some ideas are better than others, but you'll get through that when you're talking them through. Don't hold the idea in your head. Say it out loud because you might make somebody else get a better idea from what you were going to discount. I'd also say don't aim too high and keep the materials familiar and comfortable. That's something I like with the universal learning content as well. again, earlier in my career, I had this temptation of we're a science museum, so everything has to be this really big, fancy, expensive material. And sometimes that can actually be intimidating, especially if you have a younger family. The kid is in second grade and the parents aren't super familiar with science. They see this really expensive robot and they don't want to touch it or break it, so they don't engage. If you make it a Lego robot or something with, accessible materials that they have at home, you can make it something that they can feel comfortable doing. Also give them the ability to continue the work at home. So have something on your station card or on your table, a QR code, a pamphlet, whatever, that says, if you like this, do this at home. So with the slime kit we're doing, part of what I'm making for this activity in October is, yes, we'll have slime at the station for the staff to make with the kids at Trunk or Treat. But then if you like making slime, here's where you can make slime at home with materials that aren't super expensive, that you probably have already, or that you can get at Walmart for like $5. Because again, not an expert in the access realm, but what I've seen is if people feel like science isn't for them, they're not going to engage, you have to show them that what they're already doing is science and tying it in that way. And then with astrophysics and space, tie it to their familiar story. Like, think about when you were a kid and you did this, or think about a time when, like, tie it to their prior knowledge and prior experience. That's going to help them have some buy-in as well.
I love it. Yeah, and most of our programs, we love starting with, your astronomy moment. And that can be so many different things, right? It can be actually going to, look at the stars with a family member, but it could also be a poem that you've connected with, or music, right? There's astronomy is infused in our everyday life. And if you just think about it for a minute, you can have that personal connection, which I love your reference to that.
Thank you.
All right, we are just about at the half hour. Anything else you want to make sure we hear about, Michael, about your program?
Just thank you for the opportunity for growing this. I know we just received another Universal Learning grant to continue the work, so really excited for that. Just thank you for the opportunity to help reach out and inspire science learning for life in this community, because it, like, seeing their faces light up when they get it and hearing the parents say to us, like, thank you for doing this, because I was not familiar with this, but now my kid comes home, that, like, I have one caregiver happens to work at the site. Her son is in my program. She bought him a 3D doodler because he was so excited about it. That was his birthday present. So, like, it really does have an impact. So, like, thank you for giving us that opportunity to have that impact, because that's what makes this all possible.
Well, thank you, Michael. Like, you all are the boots on the ground doing the hard work, and it's so great to hear about these experiences and hear about the students you're working with and the impact that's happening. It's so nice to get little touches into those stories. So thank you for coming and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you very much.